やばっおっけ
Have you ever heard of the saying, like, you don't know what's going on around you until you notice what's going on around you? I feel like that's what Sasaki and Peeps is. It's like a perfect example and a perfect amalgamation. It's like a perfect example of that, right? It's like if you get a car, right? And you're like, wow, I've never seen a car like this before. And all of a sudden you start seeing said car everywhere. Now, those cars were already everywhere. There were several, but you just hadn't, your brain, that part of your brain just hadn't taken notice of it, right? You're just kind of like walking in blissful ignorance. And I feel like that's what's happening to Sasaki here is like, he lives in a world, he lives in this version of Japan, in this version of our world where, you know, psychics and telekinesis and people with powers exist. Now they're like the 1% of the 1%. So it's a very low amount of people, but you have these people with special abilities that do happen to exist. But again, you're always walking around with blissful ignorance. If I tell you that these people don't exist whatsoever, that it's a farce, it's a fantasy, it's just something that's fiction, much like we do today, you're going to walk around thinking all of that. But if somebody comes or you witness something yourself and you're like, oh, people with powers, people with telekinesis, like these kinds of phenomena does exist, the chances that you begin to notice after your first encounter like goes up by 1,000% because you've unlocked that part of your brain that begins to notice it. And I think that's what Sasaki and Peeps kind of skillfully does is, yes, you know, he found a bird and this is what unlocked the potential and that kind of spiraled into this other thing. But the reality is, like, let's take the bird, take the isekai part away. Let's just say that he encountered Hoshizaki and the guy with the power and everything else. These encounters that he's had after, like how the episode ended with the girl digging through trash and she opened up a gateway or portal, still would have happened. But there's a chance before that he could have walked past her. Like, you know, there's a path to where he could have walked past her. And I just think that is such a cool thing. It's like now because he's one of them, you know, he has these powers. He's been given he's bequeathed these powers and isekai. He's unlocked that part of his brain to now be on notice and be able to recognize these other things that are occurring around him, including a total group that is, a formulation of folks that is nothing but these people with powers, right? So I just think that is just such a cool thing of like, sometimes you don't notice until you notice. And I think that is like a cool little like tidbit thing that's going on here with Sasaki and Peeps that I really, really, really enjoy. Outside of that, I like how the episode ended with, again, the girl digging through the trash, opening up a portal, like, yo, where is she going? Is she going to this other world, another world? Is she just using it as, like, a means to travel? She definitely looks like a magical girl. Maybe that's just, you know, obviously that's just probably just influenced by the things that she likes. Another twist this episode is we found out that Hoshizaki is not this, you know, mature older girl. She's this 16-year-old high school girl who just dolls herself up with makeup and stuff to make herself look and seem older, and she presents herself as being more mature and older as well too. Why are they employing a 16-year-old little girl? I mean, that's a whole lot of other questions. But now, on top of the neighbor girl that Sasaki has, who definitely has a heavy interest, you know, that yandere heavy, you know, girl who has a heavy interest in Sasaki, he now has this other girl who is also in the same ballpark of age. It's also interesting. It's like, yo, can't this 40-year-old man find a girl that's, you know, I'm not even, at this point, I'm not even saying closer to his age, just like, you know, of age, like just an adult, just of age, you know, 18 plus, at least give him a 19-year-old girl or something like that. Like, so I find that really funny too. You know, this episode, we only spent a very minor time in the other world. He went there, sold some walkie-talkies. I don't know if I'm really digging him selling, you know, technology to that kind of, like, I think it's cool to sell like matches, writing utensils, stuff that would have been technologically advanced like in the early 1900s. I think like that kind of material, that kind of items, I think is really cool to sell. You know, clothespins, hangers, you know, matches, pencils, pens, different papers, rulers, these kinds of materials and tools that, you think 100 years back, even though like you think, oh, wow, 100 years ago, but that wasn't that long ago. Like, you think of like 100 years back, that kind of technology, maybe even a little bit more, maybe even to like the 30s and 40s and 50s, you know what I mean? Like maybe even like even that kind of technology, telescopes, scopes in general, stuff like that. Like I think those kind of mechanical things I think would be okay to sell. But he kind of jumped ship into like the 80s and 90s with walkie-talkies and batteries and stuff. It's like, well, that kind of stuff they can't exactly replicate. Maybe with magic or something, but like they can't exactly replicate that. So I think he took the jump into technology a little too far, and I think that's going to cause him to be put on notice more in this other world. Is like, yeah, these materials are cool, but if you think about like a match or a clothespin or like a scope or something, it's like you don't have to be this super intelligent person to take it apart and kind of understand the parts that go into it and kind of maybe explain to a third party of how you would create this item, right? If you think about like a match and the way it conducts the flame, you can kind of explain that to a third party. But how do you explain this technology that seemingly doesn't exist in this world whatsoever? I think that would definitely get you in trouble in this other world. Again, that's just my opinion. I don't think that this will have a cause and effect. I don't think it'll cause anything. I think this was just one of those like, oh, he sold another item. I think this will just end up being nothing. But if you put your brain and you think about it for a second, it's like, oh, well, when you're thinking about merchant and selling wares, you want to make sure that the wares you're selling is something that you could partner with somebody else in this world to create. You just happen to be the person with the patent or the idea. And when you're like, oh, I'm going to sell him a TV, it's like, okay, well, that might be a little too far gone, in this thing. And it's a nitpick, but just one thing I wanted to throw out there. But he only spent a little bit of time in this world selling those walkie-talkies. Most of the time was spent in our world, where he was doing his job and he had to face this other group. And we didn't really get very much time with Peeps this episode either. But he took on this mission. We met this other group who had, telekinesis, and he was able to overpower them. Thankfully, 𝐒𝐻𝐚𝐧𝐽𝐸 got knocked out, so he was able to actually use his other powers, and bro's loading these badass spells. He's looking he's just looking like Gandalf the Great over there, like just like Expelliarmus, you know what I mean? Like Avacadabra. He's going all crazy over there. And it was really, really cool to see. And I really enjoyed that too. And I like how he kind of befriended the enemies. They're like, yo, you want to just come with us? It's like, well, I wish, hopefully in the far future, in maybe episode 5 or 6, hopefully we'll learn, well, what is that other organization? What are they trying to accomplish? Are they just Team Rocket? They're just bad guys to be bad guys? Or are they actually trying to accomplish something? Like, what are they trying to do over there? But I like how he befriended them, and I think that was a cool, kind of first step for him. So overall, Sasaki, I know I was kind of all over the place, but Sasaki and Peeps, I think episode 2 is really, really good. I do think it wasn't as good as episode 1, but, at the end of the day, episode 1 was like a 45-minute episode. And it went from like idea to inception to isekai to back, so I think it covered a very broad spectrum, and it was a really, really 9 or 10 out of 10 episodes. So I think following that up is a little bit harder, but I still think this was like a 7 or 8 out of 10 episode. Really, really good. So anyways, let me know what you guys thought in the comments down below. Favorite part, least favorite part. What do you think about 𝐒𝐻𝐚𝐧𝐽𝐸? Of course she is being 16. What do you think about, everything that went on in this episode? Let me know in the comments down below. All right, friends. Peace out.